When you're running a business, there are only three elements to business, and those three elements are marketing, sales, and delivery.
Smart people are the ones that recognize their capabilities, their limitations.
88% of job seekers say that company culture is really important when they're looking for a role.
You have to stop being quite so close and so friendly, because there has to be a level of distance between you.
Your value as a leader is very much more in being the face of the brand.
When you're looking for the right leaders, often the problem is they're not looking, but they're not necessarily stopping and thinking, okay, well, let's have a look. What are the qualities of a leadership team? And let's have a look, who within my organization has those.
How can you expect people to be following your culture if they don't even know who you are?
So welcome back to the Lead Forward show. I'm Dean Whitby, and in episode 3, which is Leading Through Growth, how to keep culture, clarity and consistency when everything's scaling so fast. So we're diving into one of the biggest leadership challenges that there is. So growing fast without losing what makes your company great. So when a business starts scaling quickly, leadership gets a little bit tested. So culture stretches, communication starts to crack. So how do you keep people aligned, motivated, and performing when everything's moving at full speed? So joining me are two incredible minds in leadership and performance. David Roylance, a high-performance coach who helps leaders elevate presence, resilience, and communication to drive results. And Sandi, Goddard, a leadership strategist specialising in emotional intelligence, people culture, growing to exit, and helping growing organizations. So together we're going to unpack how leaders can build systems, protect culture, and stay centered while everything around them is accelerating at pace. So David, Sandi, thanks for joining me once again.
Thank you, Dean.
So when things are scaling fast, what are the sort of headline leadership problems that people tend to face?
I think mostly the culture they think they've set drifts. They don't actually get the kind of response that they've always had in the past. When you're small, you feel like a family. You speak to everyone. They know you.
Yeah.
As you grow, there is a danger that you're not as visible, which I know is something that you talk about a lot, Dean, that if you're not as visible, then people will get on and do their own thing. So it's really important that your managers, that the leadership at the next level down is very strong. They understand exactly what the ethos and the culture of the business is. And also it's easy to be stuck in your office, in meetings, not being around the teams on a regular basis, because everything you do is so important and so necessary and has to be done now. You don't have time. All of those stories we tell ourselves, which actually we can find the time, even if it's only a few minutes once a week, to go and to talk to people, so that sometimes as your company grows, people don't even know who owns it. They don't actually know you're the boss if you're not there all the time. So it's so how can you expect people to be following your culture if they don't even know who you are?
True.
And I also think that many business owners, when that massive growth happens, and particularly when it's growth of people, there's a real fear about missing out because you're not taking care of everything yourself. So the fear that there's nobody who can do something as well as you can do it. And so the business owner then makes the huge mistake of being maybe a micromanager or just too hands-on, and that changes the culture a great deal as well when someone grows from, say, 10 up to 50 members of staff, for instance.
You have those two different sides of the coin. One where you're too visible because you want to be dipping into everything, or at the other side you think, well, they know what they're doing, I'll focus on this. So it's finding that balance, isn't it, David? Just getting the right
It is. I mean, I always say when you're running a business, there are only three elements to business, and those three elements are marketing, sales, and delivery. And when people start making mistakes as business owners is because they haven't identified with clarity what those three pieces are. And the thing is, delivery is where we, as business owners, often feel we're providing the most value. But as we grow, it's the element of business where we provide the least value, because that's why we hire people, so that we can scale with the number of clients we can work with, because you, as a deliverer, are limited to the amount of hours there are in a week that you can devote to work without breaking. Your value as a leader is very much more in being the face of the brand, say, being in marketing, actually being in marketing even more than sales, I have to say.
It's a really interesting piece that Daniel Priestley does on this, and so he talks about how you have scout teams and then military teams as you grow your businesses. And so bigger companies will have a military team, and it will come across the financial, the operations, the sales, and then often it'll have a leader around that, and it'll have a leadership team underneath them. And then there'll be someone that's kind of a headline key person of influence typically, but they don't have to have that. But certainly that operational team is most often set up like that. But they start off with a scout team, which is those two things with two areas. What puts those three things that you've said, David, into two areas. So it puts someone who says, right, I know how to get leads and close leads, and we can bring business, and we can be really good at business. And that's one of the two in the scout team. And the other is, I know how to make people feel when we have business, and so we can keep business, you know. So small businesses start with just that scout team. But then as they scale, then, you know, so is there levels to this in terms of the leadership problem? So is it that, and I'm throwing this out there as a kind of throwaway question, but as they scale, can the leaders be outgrown? Can the capabilities and the capacity of the leaders that are currently in place, can they be outgrown as a business scales through?
Yes. And I think really smart people are the ones that recognize their capabilities, their limitations. I'm really good at this, but I need people who are really good at X or Y to join me. And people that recognize that are the ones whose businesses are successful. They don't pretend to be good at everything. I have a client at the moment, and her business is growing very, very quickly. She's already got a chairperson on board, someone who is very well known in the sectors that she will be targeting. And I think that is a very smart move, because, you know, there's someone there, a high profile individual, who is going to be an endorsement effectively of how good her business is. When she goes in and knocking on doors, she's already got the door opener there. We can't all do it, but I think it's a really great.
She's got that key person of influence at the top that is
already in place.
Not critical, but can it help?
Well, none of us are exempt from this, are we? We're all great at some things and not so great at others. Right. I presume that we all have accountants that we have in place to take care of a lot of the number crunching towards tax, because that's absolutely not my area of expertise. So absolutely being able to help people to play to their strengths, and having the right different number of strengths that are required for a business to become successful and grow, you know, that whether it be having an operations team that are about making sure that the delivery happens, having a lead generating team, having a bunch of salespeople who are really good at closing the leads, so that there's a constant stream of money coming into the business that's much greater than the money going out of the business.
And
Mm,
with when you're growing to say 50, 60 people, you don't necessarily have to have certain aspects of business in-house. You can be outsourcing your HR.
Mm.
A very, very good support team looking after you. You're going to outsource recruitment, and there's other aspects, marketing and branding. You might have a CMO, you might have a marketing officer in-house, but you might
mm.
be using all the other skills through freelancers or agencies. So I think if we look at how many companies in the country actually use a trusted advisor, it's going to be something like 98 to 100%. When you drill down, what they mean is, as David's just said, it's usually accountant, maybe a lawyer.
Yes.
I was going to say bank manager, but I don't know these days how many companies actually have a bank manager a manager who works with them, possibly only when you get to a certain level of turnover. So, but
Mm.
finding people you can trust, like the key person of influence we just mentioned, is really important.
So then moving from that into the internal teams. And again, there'll be different levels of this. So let's start at the kind of the bottom level. So we talked about, as they grow up to, I don't know, maybe it's 10, 15 employees or wherever they get to. Is it fair to say, because there'll be a lot of people who are watching this who are building a business and they haven't yet become a big business, but maybe they have aspirations to do so, or they have the right product, or they're a startup, or those kind of scenarios. Um, is the leadership team that builds the business the leadership team that can move them to big business, or does that there's complexities there, I think, come to mind for
Yeah.
me?
Well, this
I think
individual,
there are complexities. There
yeah,
are different levels, I think, of leadership team depending on the size of the organization that you need. I mean, you definitely, as you scale, start to need to have a kind of middle layer of management
yeah.
in place that bridge the gap between those who are at the cliff face and those who are leadership. I
And
mean,
they're
Sandy,
really
what's
important, aren't they?
yeah,
I,
hugely.
I was just thinking that when you start a business, you probably do it with people that you trust and know well, and you all assume certain responsibilities. As the business grows, and maybe you have that second level of management in place, you might start noticing that the leadership team, senior leadership team, probably lack some of the competencies they need. And that's always going to be a difficult one because you might need to
Mm.
move someone out of that role and bring in someone with more experience, which it's not something we recognize when we start. But as a
But it's quite common, isn't it, that you need to look at
yeah,
the skill
so
set?
someone, it's and also painful because if you've all
Yeah.
done business together, you know,
Well, it goes back to what you were saying, Sandy, because I think, when you start and you can be so proud of the culture that you build and the people that you build, and everyone's in love with the vision and the drive. And then as you scale, some of that little magic sauce can get lost. There's more people in. You introduce layers in the middle. Do they do it all as passionately as you do it? So I guess the culture drift can happen, retention, there can be a lot of problems at that stage, can't there, when you do that?
and
I'll tell you something that leadership teams are often not very good at, and that is spotting emerging leaders.
yes.
Mm.
Yes, no, I absolutely agree with you. I have seen in the past where people have been promoted because they're really good at what they're currently doing, and also they're very engaging. It doesn't mean that they're capable of stepping up and doing it
Mm.
and actually managing people, because there are certain you have to stop being quite so close and so friendly because there has to be a level of distance between you.
Yeah.
And not everyone can do that. And sometimes I've also known clients who've done this, and then the person who has been promoted and trained in has been given management training and all the rest of it's come back and said, I'm really not happy. I don't want to do this because it doesn't suit them. So you're absolutely right, David. What experience
Yeah.
have you had around this?
I'm sorry, Sandy, could you say that again? I missed
I
it.
said you were, I said you were absolutely right, David.
Oh, thank you very much.
Experiences.
I thought you asked a question though, didn't you, at the
Yes.
end of that?
What are your experiences around this not spotting management?
The real challenge not being able to spot is not knowing who are the right people to promote, having and then having very poor succession planning because they've not been able to make those right decisions, as you've just illustrated in the stories that you told. I found working a lot with an energy company that is Japanese owned, and so the leadership directive was very Japanese, but all the workforce were very much people who lived in the UK. So there was a real disconnect between the values as felt by leadership and the values that were felt by the people who were actively doing the work. So in many ways, the people who were in the leadership team or in the sort of lower ends of the leadership team stroke management team who were trying to find the right people to promote really had no idea what it was they were looking for, because they didn't engage with the values that were the values of the senior management of the company, almost all of whom were Japanese.
Yeah. And I think you can, one of the things that I like working on with clients is actually understanding the values and ethos of your business and finding out what your team, what their values are and what they think the business values should be. But of course, it's not set in stone. You should revisit it. You shouldn't just think, oh, we've done that. We'll put the posters up. That's it.
Yes.
Tick that box.
Yes.
Especially in a fast changing world, right? And the other thing I think that people should factor in is kind of, it's that when you're looking for who the right leaders are, often the problem is they're not looking, they're not slowing down, they're making that mistake that you said, Sandy, where they're looking at who's the best at what they do right now and who could add value because they're really good at their job, but they're not necessarily stopping and thinking, okay, well, let's have a look. What are the qualities of a leadership team? And let's have a look, who within my organization has those. It goes down to that brown things, red things experiment. If you ask someone to look around the room and you ask them, what brown things do you see? They'll tell you all the brown things. And then you ask them, okay, what red things did you see? And often that's nothing, because they're not looking for that, So psychologically, if you're not looking at who within my organization carries the traits of a leader, then you're probably going to make the wrong recruitment decision anyhow. So I guess that's probably lesson one. Look a bit closer.
An accountancy practice I was working with just around COVID, around lockdown, decided to actually define what the various roles were within the company and what we want the people to be able to do. What does the job mean to the company? And it was a really interesting exercise. And I think it was very helpful when they then, because they've been growing fast, then start recruiting or promoting in-house, because they've actually thought very carefully about their business, how the business will grow, and what they need in order to support that growth. It's not something that every company is going to do, I realize, because it does take time. And they were a team of 100, within the company. So they had a senior leadership team that could focus on that and spend time doing it. But I thought it was a really great, intelligent approach to building their leadership within in-house.
Another side of the coin is that people are often very good at demonstrating their value, but not demonstrating their potential.
Yes.
And that becomes often a barrier for a leadership team making the right choices, which is why when I've been brought in order to help develop people with a view to seeing who the emergent leaders are. So working particularly in groups, the focus is all on how do you communicate your value? How do you communicate your potential value to a group of people? Because if people can't see the potential of value that you're not giving the opportunity to give now, but you could if they gave you the opportunity, then it becomes a no-brainer for them to say, oh yeah, that person's obviously right.
And it's also helping those individuals to understand what you mean by value. It's
Yes.
your value to the business. How will you make that business more effective in whatever role you're working in? And often when you ask people that, they're thinking in terms of, oh, I'm writing my CV, or I'm going for a new job and I'm going to tell them I'm really good at coming in on time and doing my job and I'm very efficient. But that's not what you're talking about, is it, David?
No, it isn't. And, you know, people demonstrate value through how they show up physically in a scenario, how enthusiastically they're physically committed to making a task happen. For instance, it's like people pick up values from the three-dimensional space that you take up physically, vocally, and energetically. The number of times I've seen people go, oh yes, they go into interview, hello, I'm David, and my values are. And I always think, when I've heard that, I always think, I'll be the judge of that, thank you very much. And the way I'll judge it is through how you are physically, vocally, and energetically in the conversation we're about to have. So, you know, when an organization says, look, we painted all our values on the walls of the office so everyone knows them. Yeah. Some organizations think having them on the walls is enough.
I know.
Like, you know, and it's like, I haven't felt any of those values in any of the people who I've engaged with since walking into this office.
That's the really important thing, isn't it? That they bring in the right people as well, that carry the unsaid, that energy that you talked about, that, you know, the
Yes.
charisma that they have and the values that they deliver. And that for the culture side of things, that's incredibly important as well. But again, you're right. Some companies will hire so that they can manage or micromanage. We talked about that, people.
Yeah.
But again, the damage of that. So that there's a statistic, 88% of job seekers say that company culture is really important when they're
Yes.
looking for a role. So the damage of having the wrong leader is that 88% is a massive number. So
And they've all probably had the most appalling time at school, and what they don't want is to sit in an office experiencing the awful experience that they've had in a school environment. And who can blame them? You know,
So if you take too long about changing that leadership, you're going to lose people because they're going to be questioning you. You know, we have come to you and said, this is what's happening in our team, or this is what's happening across the company, or if it's a production company, this is what's happening on the floor, and you're not listening to us. You know, this doesn't sit with the culture we've all agreed is the ethos of our company, the values of our company. And so if you're not going to walk the talk, it's time we walked, you know, and that's what happens.
And all of this will be happening, like this kind of culture erosion that can happen, will be happening at a time of growth, right? So what seems positive, but like you say, if you're happening at a really good time, but can be so dangerous to that growth in general, if you don't make those decisions at the right time. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And just imagine if you are growing quickly and you have to deliver, and the delivery team are not performing well. You're just imagine what's going to happen. You're not going to keep those clients. And it's far more expensive to find, as you know from your background, it's harder to find a new client than to retain a client, or it should be harder. It's certainly more expensive to go out and
Yes.
bring in a new client than it is to retain an existing client, especially one that has potential value over time. So,
is that the
Many
same
years
of
ago,
leaders? Is that the same truth of leaders? It takes
yes.
longer to find a new one than it does to actually support the one you've got and train and educate and nurture
possibly,
or not.
well, it depends on whether you want to support the one you've got, or whether you need to replace the one you've got. So, I mean, I was thinking earlier when I mentioned this person who said, he was not happy to be in management. He stepped down for a while, but this was in one of my earlier clients. He had to grow, and he actually then became the leader when my client exited. So this young man who'd been promoted too early was brave enough to say, I'm not ready for this. I had time to grow into that role. But I don't think that's always true of people in the leadership role. I think they don't recognize their own faults, or they, once they're in a particular role, it goes to their head and they behave in an adverse manner, something that impacts the business adversely, certainly affects the culture within the business, can lower morale. And it's hard to get rid of someone.
It's a very difficult job, isn't it? Leadership requires skill, craft.
Oh, yes.
Experience.
Yes. As does anything of value, really. And of course, the thing is, leadership is high value. It's probably in the world of coaching, the word that is attributed with the most value is the word leadership. So there must be a reason for that, because it is a highly developed skill that's not just being able to tell people what to do and order people around, but inspire a level of action and energy from a group of people that enhances the whole of the organization together.
Yeah, I think you'll find this quite often when the owners of a business have stepped back, and then the senior leadership team have got an issue somewhere in there. It's not working effectively. And you'll see the owners step back in because they have to. They've built something that they believe in and believe it has to be going in a particular way. I suppose, I don't know if Richard Branson has ever done this, but if you think in terms of Richard Branson, we believe in a certain culture, a certain style around his businesses. And if they're not going in that direction, I imagine in the past, possibly not nowadays, he would have stepped in and tried to redirect them. And you see,
that's so common, isn't it? That's more common than you would think. That and naturally, the ship has to go in the right direction. You can't let it hit the iceberg. So perhaps people have to come back in even when they don't want to.
Yes.
Well, Richard Branson's key value is fun.
Yes, and adventure.
Yeah. It's written into his contract. If anybody hires Richard to appear at any event, it's written into the contract. If Richard's not having fun, he leaves, no refunds.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
So
on Facebook.
No, I have one of my business mentors booked him to come and do a Q&A in Singapore. And has done several Q&As with Richard Branson. They've become rather close, but it's contractually, that's in the contract, and that's in every contract that he has. The moment that he stops having fun, he just leaves, because that's the value that matters to him the most, and it's that sort of sense of fun that's in the personal brand that we kind of understand of him.
But also through his businesses as well that he does for his employees, that kind of train your employees well enough that they could go anywhere else, but treat them well enough and make it a fun place to be. That why would they want to? Where can you go?
Exactly. And he has also said that look after your employees much more than you look after your clients.
Yeah,
they're much more important because of course they'll look after your clients. That's right.
So where do you want to go from here,
Perhaps
Dean?
that's why he hasn't had to step in. Maybe he has. We should do that. So in terms of playbooks and standard operating procedures,
yes.
So is that important? So we're talking about scaling and growth, and does that become less important? At what level does that become less important? You know, if it's a medium business or a big business, you know, but how you bring people on, how you scale is going to be really important, isn't it?
Yes, but also as part of that onboarding, people have to understand how the business works, how their role works within the business. They have to understand the no-goes within a business. How do you talk to people? How do you what are the steps to sending out something as simple as a proposal or an order?
Yeah.
They have to be there, that you have to have the quality control in place, all of that.
And also to have that documented, I feel, to have that as procedures that this is what we do in training, this is what we do about culture, this is how we treat each other, this is how you so it's not kind of every time
it starts with branding. You are branding. It's not just logo, the identity, it's everything that follows on. So everyone has the same email address line. Everybody does letters out to clients in the same way. We pick up the phone and answer it in a particular way. I remember years ago, I heard one of my teams being quite detrimental about a client after they put the phone down. And I said, no, you don't do that, because before you know it, you'll be treating them that way on the phone.
Yes.
Never run a client down, because, or anybody actually, you don't run any contractor down, because that will come over in your voice at some stage, because you'll get into the habit of doing it. So I do think procedures are really important. So over to you, David.
It's the small things. Sweat the small things. Yeah. What do you think, David?
Yeah. I think people learn, again, I'm going back to school. People learn at school or people learn at university, all the rules around, you have to learn if you're at university how to structure an essay. That's part of the standard operating procedure of being able to get your degree. And I'm sure that's only the beginning of all the many things that you learn at university. Why should a workplace be any different in that respect? And so the onboarding process, the more systems you give people, the safer they're going to feel to be able to inhabit that, because there'll be fewer examples of them going, I don't know what to do, and also have a system in place for what to do when people think to themselves, I don't know what to do. And then there are going to be less challenges as people become onboarded and take up their role.
And also encourage them to deal with their mistakes, to own their own mistakes. Because if we don't encourage people to make that, when they've made that, to make a mistake is human. If we don't have that as part of our DNA in a company, people are going to hide mistakes. They're not going to want to tell you what they've done, which could actually become quite a big problem further down the line. I worked for a company years ago where the FD, I don't know how he was recruited, but he was so impressed with the role and the CEO that he hid all the orders and demands in a drawer. Invoices that came in just went in.
Lord.
I know, can you imagine? The company thought they were making shed loads of money, so they were spending it. But the debt was piling up. So you have to be sure that people are being honest and speaking honestly. You know, I
And
know
that's part of the
horrible
leadership.
story.
Well, that's part of, as well as the leadership and getting that right, and allowing people, and not then crucifying them as soon as they do. There's a balance there, a bit of give and take, which only an experienced leader would have. I saw a phrase coming in this morning, which was, when chaos hits, clarity is the only currency.
Yes.
So there's the overall building the pillars that every business should do. And Daniel Priestley does a good video on those. I sound like I'm in his fan club. I'm not. It just comes to mind. But he has these 7 pillars that businesses need to build as they go through the thing. But does that some of that come down to things like how you set up your leadership? So, is that, what do you do in the mornings? Is that, how do you do your check-ins? Is that how you communicate throughout the team? Those kind of things.
And it becomes more and more important as your company grows. So
Yeah, and
So
how you communicate to the entirety of your operation.
yeah. Yeah.
What good tips do we have around that? Because there's going to be a lot of people who maybe they're just moving too fast, or they haven't got time to slow down, or maybe they're just not experienced at growing a business. They found themselves in a position. So what's some good tips around how you can, good practices that will mean that there's clarity in the chaos?
I think honesty, always be honest, but you don't always have to voice everything. Sometimes you have to think about it first, because you may not always want to speak about sensitive issues in front of everybody in the company.
Mm-hmm.
Always just take a moment to think about it. What about you?
Yeah.
I would say go back to your systems, because the beauty of systems is, no matter how big the challenge, no matter how big the chaos, you go back to the system and you have something that works to be able to move beyond where you are right now and implement the system in terms of resolving what that clarity is, and then how you articulate that clarity so that everyone who's involved in making stuff happen feel that they are being guided by a leader who knows what they're doing. So there's a level at which you get big to the point that you do need a level of formality in those relationships. If you've got less than 10 people, your leadership team can be quite informal, but as soon as it gets, say, beyond 12, you have to have a level of formality, and that's got to be informed through how they react, how they show up, how they speak.
That's really important in relationships, isn't it? To inspire, even just the simple thing, as you were speaking then, what I was thinking was, sometimes in a relationship, you just need to inspire the other person that that they can believe in you. And that's the fundamental difference between a leader and a manager, I suppose, is that, a manager is good at just managing people, managing systems, and that's really good. And a lot of businesses might have managers. But a leader who can say, listen, actually, we know where we're going. I've got this all in hand. It's all very clear. I'll communicate it to you. Come on the journey with me.
Yes.
Are they, sometimes that's what's missing, maybe just that guidance.
Well, I think so, and you feel it in political leaders because you see them all the time on a television or on a screen, so you can see it and hear it and feel it when someone is inspiring to an audience, and you can do exactly the same when you hear that someone is not, and so I suppose there's a version of you as a person that you have to show people, and there are elements of who you are that you can't show people if you want them to have faith in you and understand that you have faith in them.
And
as a
everybody
leader.
has the shadow side.
Yes. Well, funnily enough, I used to be business development for a digital agency, and it was run by a very close friend of mine who was an ex-stand-up comic, and he still is, one of the most charismatic men that I've ever met in my life. He's hysterically funny when we meet. He was running a studio of about 16 designers, 4 developers, who were all in their early 20s, in sort of, I'd say 3/4 of the room was male in their early 20s. And the thing is, he was so open about everything that was going on in his life that it terrified everyone, because he told them everything. He told them too much. He shared how worried he was. He shared how upset he was when he had no filter to be able to go, do you know what, this isn't actually appropriate in front of my staff. Not in a, not in a way that we should be worried about from a legal perspective, but just, he would share what was going on for him at home, and he would share his emotions with everybody, and it just made people feel really unsafe, and they needed someone at the top, particularly because his charisma, because he and I were the sales team, and we were very good at bringing clients in who would then be almost immediately disappointed the moment that they were introduced to a designer who didn't have any of the charisma qualities. So they started to miss me and my friend, and so that was detrimental, because it became difficult to hand people over to the room. And a lot of that was because they were terrified of these clients.
Yes. And I think that I said earlier about being careful about what you share. It's as a leader, you have to know when to share and when not to share. It's so important. Yeah. And also,
and that's internally.
Yes, but also externally as well. But
internally, sure.
But internally, because it's so unsettling. And when you've got if your people are unsettled, morale drops and the work suffers. It's just a downward spiral. So it's really
there's an
important.
element of skill to leadership that not everybody can be a leader without kind of development of themselves.
They say you can learn. They say you can't learn to lead, that your leaders are born, but I think probably there are innate leaders who don't recognize it in themselves, who could be taught.
Yeah.
I think everyone can be taught charisma, and everyone can be taught how to create different kinds of relationships and much stronger kinds of relationships.
100%, I agree with that. And one thing I want to throw out there, which will be something that audiences might want to think about what you do, David, and they might want to think about what we all do, definitely, is that we talk about the kind of what you portray, but when you have that stats that like 80%, 88% of people look at the leadership teams before deciding whether they want to join. So the very opportunity to grow and get the right people and the right cultures in your business is a fight to start off with. If you don't have good leaders who are externally promoting your business and talking about that. So I think coming forward into 2026, that's going to be a huge problem for a lot of brands, is how do these C-suite teams externally promote the values of a business in a world where the values are becoming more important, and that could be ever so costly if there is no voice and there is no, external promotion of what, those people. Like imagine, I suppose, if you had 2 businesses and one doesn't have any of the leadership team who are vocal, how can the 88% decide? But if another one invests in their leadership team to tell them how to speak, help them to show up, and their presence, develop their personal brands even, you know, who are these people going to pick? The ones they can see, who are seen and
Yes.
hurt,
There's
or
also
the other.
one of the things a good leader can also do, and you were talking about succession. Part of succession is ensuring there's mentoring, and you can include mentoring within your organization, and that's you can coach your managers in how to coach others and how to mentor others within the company. And I think that's something that both David and I do with our clients. You know, it should be cascading down. So everyone is learning to be confident. Everyone is learning how to position themselves well.
Yeah.
I think that's where you get a really successful organization.
And the thing is, what Sandi and I do is we shine a light on the blind spots that people can't see from inside, because everyone has blind spots. Every company will have blind spots, and everyone within the company.
That external perspective, isn't it? So, yeah. So we often don't see.
And ongoing, I suppose, there's the teams that are there that probably need, you know, looking at the light shining on the the development of that, how to lead tomorrow's people, but also I suppose comes into that as they bring new people. It's the continuation of that, isn't it? That it's not a one-stop shop, that things move so quickly now that they're going to have new managers, new leaders in a scaling business.
Always.
Yes. I worked recently with an EA management team within an investments firm, and they were busy taking everything home with them in terms of the frustration that was coming out of the people underneath them, who actually were in a much better position than they understood that they were. But because there'd been an edict from the leadership team, this is the edict: there will be no pay rises, there will be no new hirings. If somebody leaves, the work has to be divided up amongst the rest of you. Because of that edict, they all forgot about the extra things that the firm was giving them. And the firm was giving them some really high-end resources, but they couldn't see it. They couldn't feel it, because all they got was the edict. And I was working with the management team who were receiving all this rage and anger and frustration, and because they felt they couldn't take it upstairs, because they took it to the leadership team, and the leadership team went, "We don't care, just sort it out." And so what they did was they took it home with them instead, and then they end up being frazzled, and then they end up being close to either breaking or resigning.
And also they probably take time off sick. So or it's presenteeism, they're not actually working, they're just there.
And then obviously they communicate that, and then it's hard to recruit, it's hard to retain, and a bit of a vicious circle.
How did you change that, David?
And for me, working specifically with that EA management team, my job was to stop them taking it home, and to empower them to go to the management team and go, "Listen, you know, it's no good just saying deal with it."
It can be very difficult, though, to find the right triggers when you're trying to send messages upstairs.
Yeah, it is. It is. But the truth is, they know those people better than I do. So actually, and the management team have so many more resources that they're excellent at bringing out, if only they recognize that they are resources. And also, if the people below them recognize how much they are actively getting, as a result of being part of this firm?
Yes, I suppose it also depends on the ownership. So if an organization is owned by an entity or owned by individuals. So by
Yes.
entity, I mean, a fund or a investment group or venture capitalists, rather than the
Yes.
people who actually built the business and are still, their blood is still in the business, their DNA is still part of that business. I think the kind of engagement will be different. So
Yes.
the responses will be different. So then you've got to really understand what are the triggers that will make them respond positively to these problems. And if you don't know the individuals as well, you've got to then start thinking in terms of, okay, what is it that this venture capitalist firm wants? We know that they've taken over business. They're probably going to reduce numbers. As you say, they're going to ask everyone to work harder for their money. The employees are probably quite well paid, probably have all sorts of employee benefits that may not be
Right.
available in other firms. But how do you get that acknowledgement and response?
Yes. Well, and the thing is, it's all created by scarcity coming out of the leadership team. The energy of scarcity, the energy of fear doesn't make anybody feel inspired. I'm often saying to clients, see the world as it is, not worse, not better. Don't have your head in the clouds thinking it's all going to be fine if I just sit and wait. And also, don't catastrophize
Mm, mm.
what's going on, because what people often do is they catastrophize by taking responsibility for things that are not their fault.
So
Yes.
let's try and give some takeaways. So we know it's a fast changing world. So there's a lot going on. There's technology that comes into this. Finding the right leaders. Gen Z are probably and millennials are probably well placed to be the future leaders because they're probably used to some of the technologies and moving at speed. So
It's
what are the
interesting. I'm at working with UCL at the moment,
yeah.
with the marketing students in the management course, and I'm going in as is an expert on social media who I occasionally work with, and we've been doing a lot of stuff together. And what's fascinating is the students are responding to her, and the senior management at UCL thought the students would love what she's bringing to them, but they're going, we already know this, but what David's bringing, we don't know. So can we have more of David? Because
Love that.
I'm doing the stuff about, well, actually, if you breathe here and you look directly into the camera, or you find, I love to share with people, think of it, get yourself a thinking spot in any room you are in, and your thinking spot has to be a place on the wall opposite the one that's just above your eye line, that becomes the place you can have any crisis without anyone knowing what's going on for you. And they're all like, wow, that's amazing, never thought of anything like that, because that's not what the younger generation are taught. So there's real value in how people show up like
Sure.
that.
So when what do people, so if you're a smaller business and you're growing, what takeaways can we give from this? So one is, clarity in the chaos. Two is build pillars for how you recruit, how you nurture, how you promote. Look at what are the qualities that good leaders have, not how good are people at what they do. Look at your culture, how you treat people. The Richard Branson effect should be relatively simple to get right. Train people well, invest in the training, nurturing, and treat them well. That should be quite easy to get. Having a voice externally should be relatively straightforward. It's not I mean, probably looking at the leadership team, easier to do when you're smaller, but even for those bigger businesses, who is the voice, and what are they really portraying, and does that actually suit the values of the company? If it's that important, so all of those things should be quite simple, right? Maybe not in practice, but
and don't forget processes and procedures.
Systems.
Yeah, and standard operating procedures that you hold people by, that are the pillar to those values, and that you decide. What else can we take away that might be useful? Have we missed anything there?
I think that's pretty comprehensive. Right? Just enjoy and like.
Yeah, I think my advice to businesses right now would be encourage learning, learn more, because of that fast changing world. So implement systems for that learning. I always find it surprising how many businesses I sit in front of when we're looking at generative engine optimization and trying to get ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude or Gemini to say someone's name, and who haven't yet explored AI, neither used AI, and we're having a conversation about getting AI to say your business's name. So that it's quite common. I don't think everybody is using AI, for example, but so that tells me that within businesses, even the most experienced businesses at every stage, not just small businesses, but big businesses, there's stuff that they don't know how to do. And so, but there's never been a vaster experience for learning on lots of platforms, YouTube, AI, all of the social channels. So they should find. Is there any tips you would give in terms of where people can find the tools, the information that they need, like to learn?
I always say you've got to cross-reference. Never ever believe one source. Check. These days you really do need to check where you're getting your information from, and is it common across 2 or 3 platforms? Then it's probably true, or 2 or 3 sources, I should say. So we were talking about something earlier, and we needed to find out about something to do with the UK, and my go-to is something like the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, for instance. So I wouldn't necessarily trust Google or Facebook. I'd go to the source if I can, and then work backwards. What about you?
Of course, that's probably important for trust, isn't it? Getting something like that wrong could speak volumes.
Well, the thing about using things like ChatGPT and those kind of AI is you only get quality stuff if you put quality stuff in.
Yeah.
So the prompt is the key. So it's about being specific in what it is you are looking for. For instance, if I were to go to ChatGPT and say, hey, write a brochure for David Roylance as a speaker, it would do exactly that, but it would also say David Roylance is a yoga teacher, which I'm not. Because it would say that because there's another David Roylance who is a yoga teacher, right? But it wouldn't know that we're 2 different people. But if I say, write a brochure on the basis of the text that's within these 2 specific websites that talk about me, then you've created finite enough parameters to get accurate information.
But we've also, oh, sorry.
No, go on. Sorry.
Also pointed it to the source of that information. My argument about AI at the moment, and people learning a lot of information that's absolutely untrue, is exactly that: rubbish in, rubbish out. We have a neighbor who's spent the last 30 years in AI, and he's got about 1,000 people working for him now, primarily in the States. And he was saying that the areas that he would trust AI is in the actual where it's being used technically. So, for instance, in security, in hospitals, in medicine, there are loads of areas where AI is amazing, but people who keep using AI just unless they're going to a bona fide source are not necessarily going to learn well.
Yeah, and the prompt engineering thing is, is a huge thing. Sometimes I've heard people spending 45 minutes to an hour making a prompt. So that's just refining and then saying, no, that's not quite right, refining. So that's probably an area. The reason that I say that is if someone wants to develop one standard operating procedures, yes, if you put, please write me standard operating procedures for my business, it's manufacturing furniture, and I want you to give me a standard operating procedure for our recruitment, then,
Yes.
how we recruit people and the culture around that. I mean, yeah, it's going to be rubbish, right? But if you then carry on the conversation and say, well, actually take the time to read what's spat, either improve the prompt at the start, so that it's much more structured, like you say. But even if not, that generative conversation, you can then go back and say, look, that doesn't quite fit. These are my thoughts on this. Just rework that. And you could spend kind of an hour coming to refining and fine-tuning it, where actually it could write those standard operate procedures for you within an hour in a conversation. But you've got to put the effort in, because like you say, Sandi, rubbish in.
Absolutely. Just as David said, you've got to be sure you feed in the right parameters. Otherwise, it's not going to work well.
I think that's the missing piece of how people, will feel that AI is not working for them. Like you said, Sandi, the thing that you'll have in that technical aspect is if it's a law firm, or if it's medical profession, or if it's something that's technical, they're going to make sure that the prompt engineering that goes behind anything is very, very thorough. There's going to be hours and hours spent on that. And actually, it's more about people using their IP when they're prompting to get the best value.
I mean, I think AI is amazing. I think that the human race is getting huge benefits from it, but equally we're frittering it. I mean, to spend hours ensuring that your photographs represent an artificial you is a very poor use of AI, especially when you think about the energy used on that. You think you could be powering cities around the world on the amount of time that people are spending trying to improve how they look to put into social media. And I think that's just such vanity.
And that'll come to light. That'll come to light in the same way that it is coming to light for EV. The kind of what sometimes feels good on one hand is negative on another. So I think AI will have a lot to answer for within that. But we digress. So I hope that for our viewers, they will have had a lot of kind of tips and points to listen to that they found very interesting, and hopefully some things they can throw into their business to help improve. Is there anything you think I should have asked you that perhaps I haven't?
No, I'm sure there's nothing that can't wait till next time.
Yes. That's how I feel too. We've had a great conversation.
Case, I'll put a link to both of your LinkedIns in the comments, as always, because I know that you do some great work with businesses in how to kind of nurture and develop their leadership teams to maybe think from a different lens, shall we say, and operate, which will have tremendous value internally and externally for those businesses, which has huge value in revenue, I believe. So we'll put those links in, and until next time, see you next time.
Thank you. Cheerio.